AFA today
on AFR Talk.
AFR Talk.
So glad that you're with us. AFA today on AFR Talk, lighting up the airwaves in the middle of the day, making sure that you are understanding what is going on around you, and grateful for the expert analysis of Ed Morrissey. And friends, I got to tell you, by the way, Kevin McCullough is my name, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Got to tell you that there was much that I think people were... And Hobby Lobby's team was out saying before the decision came down today that they felt confident. I don't know that a 5-4 decision is something that makes me feel, bold enough to say I would feel confident about, because it's a 1-point win. But at the same time, it was a well-placed argument, a well-put-together argument that the majority of justices on the Supreme Court saw the merit of. And so it's a huge win for religious liberties. It's almost impossible to describe, I think, how important it was to win this case, because if the government can force you to do something small, they can force you to do something large. And I wondered in the back of my mind if today maybe John Roberts wishes he had voted differently on the first time Obamacare came up. Maybe he doesn't at all. But today he voted on the right side of the issue, and I was grateful to see that. Also, I want to just caution a word here. There's a lot of people that are out there saying ridiculous things. For instance, that because this case went the way it did, the Supreme Court now is anti-woman. People that were on the side of Hobby Lobby must be anti-woman. Don't be surprised, friends. Do not be surprised if the same, angry, discontent, animalistic tactics that were used in the controversy over Prop 8 in California don't start to be used against some of these companies that won today. All that to say, and I'm a big believer in this, the free market should have as many diverse opinions and people and groups in it as possible. That's what makes the free market good. Then I, as a consumer, based on what I believe, what I want to be the case, how I want to order my life, et cetera, I have the most number of options to pick from. So if I have a pro-abortion providing employer over here that I can go work for, or I have someone who's not providing it over here and I want to work for a company that espouses my values, I should have the right to do that. I should also, if I'm a consumer and spending money in the marketplace, I should have the right to see if my monies go to support groups that do pay for abortions for their employees or groups that don't. I want to vote with my pocketbook. I want to vote with my dollars. And I think that the idea that we have to have the Supreme Court adjudicate this mandate that, if you're gay, you have a right to force a business to do something that violates the conscience of who they are. I just think that's ridiculous. I don't think that anybody should be blackmailed into providing abortions or the taking of unborn children's lives by point of gun. I think that in this situation, the best outcome possible is let businesses decide for themselves what they will and won't do, and then let the marketplace decide the rest. See, people that don't trust the consumers usually know that they're morally bankrupt in their viewpoints, because there's too much loyalty, for instance, in the faith-based community for people that espouse their values. We seek them out. We go and shop at their places. We give them our business on purpose. I think there's this idea that, because, I might not have a morally acceptable view about things, I don't want to be punished in the marketplace. But every decision we make has consequences to it. And it was really important, friends, that the Supreme Court get this right today, because if the government can force you to violate your conscience on a small level, they can turn around and force you to do big things later. And this is a really good win. Now, I want to talk to you the rest of the show. 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Your thoughts on this. And particularly if you're a woman, because all three of the women of the Supreme Court soundly rejected the majority's opinion and said that no, this was giving some sort of control to the employers over a woman's sexual life. You heard Ed's response to that. Oh my goodness, he rolled his eyes. Let's take line 3. Jessica calling from Jessica. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. You're on with Kevin McCullough.
I just wanted to express my gratitude to those who voted on the right side of this issue. And also I wanted to say, even though I am a Christian, there are people in the world that are not, and they have deeply held personal beliefs. And this can be a victory for them as well, because they also have beliefs, and they shouldn't be forced to go against whatever their belief is. And if they don't like a company because they have a different belief, they don't have to shop or do business with that company. But I just think that this is the best thing, to wake up in the morning and find out that this is passed.
Yeah.
And
well, Jessica, I'm glad we could do that for you.
And I believe in pro-life. I believe that that's a baby in there. If somebody else doesn't believe that, they just don't have to do business with those companies. Do a different business with a different company.
Yeah. No, we're on the same page, Jessica. Thank you for your call, and thank you for your listenership. Let's go to Daniel in Alabama, line 1. Daniel, you're on with Kevin McCullough. Glad you're with us.
Hey, thank you. Sorry to disappoint. I'm not a woman to help answer your question there, but I just wanted to provide 2 comments and a question to you. The first comment is I want to encourage all Christians that Christianity certainly, and people that, espouse to this belief certainly did a great justice to the faith by, helping to support Hobby Lobby, from a theological perspective and from a boots on the ground at the Supreme Court, actually, showing support. But also, I think it encourages Christians to engage in business because they now have a precedent to say, if I'm on the borderline, because I forget what the number was, but you had to maybe it's 50 or 100 employees where you had to provide this health care or make this an option. So I think that encourages also Christians to say, hey, I can expand my business and to not feel religiously suppressed about it, and that they can take a stand over this. But my question is that I wanted to ask you about the broader the next step that's going to take place because of this ruling, as far as having the ability to go into business as a religiously minded individual, and that you aren't a publicly held company, but you are a for-profit company. And I wondered if there was a difference or an opinion you had as far as whether...
No, I think that the ruling enables all for-profits to do well, to do well under this. I think the only thing that is not yet decided, because this basically said if you're a for-profit, and they use the term closely held, which is it's actually a legal term. I didn't know this. I was actually on the phone talking about this with David Limbaugh earlier this morning because I wanted to get as many legal minds into my own way of thinking as I could to understand. And he said, no, Kev, he said, that's a long established idea. Closely held means it's family owned. It's a small group of owners. It's privately owned, but it is for profit. They're all for profit companies. The only thing this ruling doesn't make clear is to what degree more broadly held publicly traded companies like AT&T or GE or some of those would have to do, because there are so many owners of that company that if I'm assuming what they would have to do is have a vote by their shareholders to come to the decision if they wanted to deny certain services or so forth. So I think that, and I'm not, to be terribly candid with you, I don't care what AT&T and all these other guys do. What I don't want is the Constitution being used to choke out the life of the mom and pop, because the entrepreneurs of this country are far more important than the large blue chip corporations. And so the fact that they're not able to do that, and see, this gives even a publicly traded company the option, if they don't want to provide those services, then they could simply buy back stock, become a closely held company, and then they would be eligible to do what they wanted to do by way of these laws. So I think this is a really, really good and fairly broad ruling, much broader than what people that I'm watching on Facebook feeds and Drudge Report and other places are wanting to read into it. I think it's actually a fairly significant win.
Oh, well, yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking. I just wanted to kind of pose the broader effect, and I apologize if that was a repeated question that you may have asked one of your experts earlier. But I was just curious and wanted to ask that, and I appreciate.
No, it's okay, Daniel. I appreciate you. 888-589-8840. Let's go to David, who's calling from Texas. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hey, Calvin, I am a first-time caller, but I've been listening to you for about a year now, and I just wanted to call in and say that I agree with you. I think this is a huge victory, and I think we need to see this for what it is. We need to go ahead and pursue this, and we need to, as Christians, see businesses like this, whether they're private or public, and we need to invest our time and our money in these businesses.
I like that idea, David. In fact, thanks for the call. One of the things that I'm hoping that this will spur is kind of what Daniel was saying, a greater desire to do entrepreneurial work. There's nothing of greater help to our economy than people going into business for themselves. And the mom and pop startups, if we can keep government out of them and off the back of those business owners, we're going to be a better nation in the long haul. Let's go to line 4. Catherine is calling from Texas. Hi, Catherine. Welcome. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you.
Hi, thank you. I have 2 points. One, it's interesting how the mainstream media seems to want to say that they are saying that Hobby Lobby did not want to cover any contraceptives, and they're ignoring the fact that, they do cover contraceptives, just not the abortive drugs that leads to abortion or the aborting of their child.
Yeah, and Catherine, there are other companies that are involved in this debate that didn't want to provide any contraception, and it's the same principle, so it should be upheld the same way. Whether you want to provide some or none, you should have the right as the business owner to make that decision.
Right, and also speaking of decisions, interesting that Today Show correspondent, I did not hear that, but I'm not surprised, how she's contradicting herself by saying if you, I don't think she realizes she's contradicting herself, but by asking a corporation or your employer to pay for your choices, that's involving them.
Right, exactly.
I mean, all I know is this. If 2 people choose abortion, I think those 2 people responsible for the pregnancy, if that's what they choose, should be paying in full. And if you don't want to involve your boss paying for your sexual mistakes or bad choices, then by paying from yourself, you're not involving. So she contradicted herself by saying that if you want your
I fully agree with you, Catherine, and thanks for the call. You know what's interesting about this is that there were women outside the Supreme Court holding up signs saying, "Stay out of my business," stay out of my sex and stay out of my body's business and all the rest of it. And I'm like, you don't understand. You're making the case for Hobby Lobby. That's all they're saying. We don't want to have anything to do with it. But this tells you how deeply entrenched the entitlement idea that I should be allowed to do whatever I want, and even if it forces other people to pay for it, then they should just have to pay for my consequences. How deeply rooted that is in the psyche of modern young America. And it's kind of probably a very brusque wake-up call today, probably like having cold water trounced on them, to go, what? Huh? I have to be responsible for my own choices? And to hear, as Catherine was saying, I referred to an NBC legal analyst earlier who was on talk radio on my way to the studio today, and she was just ripping this decision up one side and down another and saying at the end of the day, all of the control has been put back into the hands of, these white men who own businesses, as if race had anything to do with it and as if anyone else should have anything to do with it. You want to live a wild life? You want to live a life of sexuality that has no limits and you want to be in charge of that? That's great. Go knock yourself out. You pay for every piece of it. That's no one else's business. You're right. And no one else should have to pay for your activity in any form at all. Period. End of discussion. Let's go to line 3. Debbie is in Mississippi. Hi, Debbie. Welcome. Kevin McCullough. Glad to have you here on this broadcast.
Yes. The point I want to make is that if this had been Muslims that said we will not sell this or do this because of our religion, there would never have been an issue made it seems like they're leaning more against the Christians than the Muslims. It just seems like there's a big discrimination there.
Debbie, well put. Thank you for the call. And actually, you're not far off. And if we had not had this story break today, one of the stories I was going to bring to your attention had to do with what our military personnel in Bahrain right now. We have about 8,200 troops in Bahrain. And they've been told you can't proselytize. The Air Force can't have Bibles in the rooms of the whatever. But they are now, the 8,200 troops that are in Bahrain today, Ramadan has started. They're not allowed to drink coffee on their way to their job because it would violate the laws of Ramadan in Bahrain, and they're being forced to observe Ramadanian principles and rules so as to, quote, not offend their hosts. Absolutely stunning. When you get down to it, we're going to force observation of Ramadan, but we're going to prevent the Bible from being in the hands of troops that want it. Just not right by any measure. Well, friends, appreciate everything you've done today on the broadcast. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks to Ed Morrissey, who made time for us out of his busy schedule. He's doing about 100 hits today. But I know that the analysis continues next with Brian Fisher and Focal Point on AFR Talk and throughout the afternoon. And, of course, we'll be back tomorrow with all the news that is. And we'll see you here on AFA Today on AFR Talk.